Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. I jumped the gun a little bit just then, and you know why? Because I can. Once again, I am your Duke of Dope Discourse, your sommelier of science fiction or cinema, your master of fun and wonder, your chancellor of cheerfulness, your archbishop of Banterbury, and of course, if you choose to believe, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am here with episode number 387. Wow, that's a lot. 387 of Robservations, the show about something, and I am robcasting at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. I am robcasting from the Robservatory. It is still a very rainy day outside, and to be honest, I've run out of gummy bears, I've run out of beer, I've run out of those pretzel bites that have peanut butter in them. I'm running out of dog treats. This is not your problem. These are my problems. But I'm going to have to venture out, I think, and if nothing else, get a pizza after the show is over, because that's adulting, ladies and gentlemen. That's adulting, I suppose. But anyway, it's time for another great show. I'm going to have a fun time today. Got some more letters from all of you. Thank you, by the way, for sending them in. I hope everybody is staying safe, staying sequestered. Let's get this thing over as soon as possible. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on out there. And luckily, right now, we can have a little bit of fun, even though some of the news I'm bringing you is a little dire, but interesting nonetheless. So, as an independent filmmaker myself, I have to say it's very strange right now because, as you all know, I've been working on the special features for The Hills Run Red Blu-ray that Scream Factory is putting out theoretically on June 16th. Let's hope that happens. Our deliveries are due this week, and then the disc will be authored and go into replication. But what's really strange about it is, I'm looking at myself 12 years ago producing a movie in a foreign country, and now I'm making documentaries about something I did 12 years ago. And it's not just me, it's Dave Parker who directed the film, and Eric Olson, the executive producer, and the entire cast and crew. It's just a strange thing to be spending this sort of, these times. A lot of people are out of work. I'm still working, but it's very bizarre. It's very weird. Like, I feel like I'm looking into a bizarre, I don't know, a time vortex where I'm looking at myself 12 years ago, and I really am. It's very bizarre. And it is kind of, in a way, kind of fun. And you remember that, oh yeah, I did produce a movie in Bulgaria 12 years ago that Warner Brothers put out. So that's fun. But it's strange. It's strange to be looking at yourself a large percentage of your life ago doing something. I feel sometimes that I'm eavesdropping on myself from the future. It's strange. But fun nonetheless. I just felt I would share that. I'll tell you what I have to share too. Oh my God, Devs episode 7. Can we just talk? Are you guys watching Devs? I mean, I literally, at one point, I was hiding behind my fingers, having a moment of existential dread watching the show. And it's not because there was anything earth-shattering going on, even though there was, if you think about the ramifications. I just think Devs is it's a very quiet show. It's a very contained show, and yet it basically is dealing with, I don't know what it's quite leading up to, but I hope it sticks to landing. But the questions it raises, it's just really compelling sci-fi. And I couldn't help but think, because Alison Pill is in Devs, and she was also in Star Trek Picard playing Dr. Girardi, what it would have been if Devs was actually Picard. The series Devs was Picard, and it was the synths who were the devs. And if you're watching the show, you'll know what I mean. But imagine if you just, everything you were watching was Picard set in the Star Trek universe, but in the Devs, but it was Devs but Picard. And at the end of this episode, Picard himself was walking through the doors, and I just was like, wow. Wouldn't it have been interesting to have seen a Star Trek episode or a Star Trek series that was grappling with what Devs is grappling with? And I'm like, man, I want to see that. That's the Star Trek I'd like to see. I think Alex Garland is crushing it. He's written and directed, obviously, the whole series. And it's so nice to watch a piece of science fiction that's so beautifully constructed and I think very well written and really compelling. Great stuff. And go Alex Garland. So thank you for that, sir. Great stuff, great stuff, great stuff. I can't recommend the show highly enough. Which brings me to today's topic. And today's topic, very sort of interesting, one that is near and dear to my heart. And I wanted to sort of talk about this. As we all know, a lot of the film festivals that were upcoming, such as Tribeca or South by Southwest, have sort of gone by the wayside. And I have spoken often about how I feel about the disappointment those filmmakers must feel. I know what that's like. You've made your film, you've submitted it to festivals, and you hope beyond all hope that you get in. And if you do get in, it becomes really a highlight of your professional life. It's an amazing thing that happens. And to feel that elation and then have those hopes dashed on the rocks, as it were, by what's happening out there. And look, again, when I say these things, I'm acknowledging that there are people dying. But I'm just trying to put it in perspective of this show and where I'm at. So I don't need to be making light of anything else that's going along. I'm just talking about things that imagination connoisseurs are directly interested in. I do not mean to slight or besmirch anything else that's going on in the world, but that's not, my show is about imagination connoisseurs, and I'm going to continue discussing these things because I think it's interesting. And, you know, if I want to watch 24-hour news about the COVID-19 pandemic, I could do that, but I don't think you tune into this show for me to do that. So I'm just acknowledging, I know what's going on, and these things that I'm talking about, even I'm like, these seem a little petty considering what's going on. But I'm going to do it anyway because I think that's why you guys tune in, and a lot of people have written me notes of thanks and praise for continuing to talk about these things during this time. So I'm going to continue to do that. But anyway, this particular subject matter, having been an indie filmmaker, being an indie filmmaker now, and I will be an independent filmmaker in the future, going to film festivals is something I really, really like. And I've been to film festivals in Spain. I've been to film festivals in Hawaii. I've been to film festivals all over the country. I've been to film festivals in Canada. I love film festivals. And when you get your movie into a film festival, it's never not a thrill. It's always a thrill. So I was, and by the way, when you've made a film and it goes to a film festival, that can be important in terms of the life of the movie, because a lot of the time, if you're an independent filmmaker and you somehow raise the money to make a movie, going to film festivals could lead to distribution. And a lot of films, obviously, that is the holy grail, is that you've made a film that later gets picked up for distribution. And through having it distributed, you make enough money to pay back your investors, and hopefully it'll lead to you making a second film. So film festivals can be vitally important, and big film festivals are, whether it's Tribeca, whether it's South by Southwest, whether it's Toronto, whether it's Sundance. These are Telluride, I don't know if you can get in Telluride, but these are really important things for the life of indie filmmakers. So, interestingly enough, Amazon has teamed up with South by Southwest, and they want to show the films that got into South by Southwest. They want to show them on Amazon. Now, I want to read an article that was in the Hollywood Reporter today about this, and talk about why I'm deeply conflicted about this very thing. I'm showing... Oh, come on, man. I am showing that my stream it's flickering in and out again like it did the other day. So it looks strong now. You know what, I'll soldier on, and if for some reason the stream cuts out, I will restart the show from the beginning. Right now it looks okay. What do you guys think? Well, we'll see. It looks okay now. I'm going to keep going. let's hope it allows me to continue. Anyway, so this article. Showing things for free isn't... Oh, by the way, this is in the Hollywood Reporter today. Mia Gallupo wrote this article. It was posted at 7 o'clock this morning. No easy solution. Filmmakers weigh risk of South by Southwest's Amazon offer. Showing things for free isn't going to make a dent, says one producer of a project that has opted out of the tech giant's festival collection. As cancellations and postponements of film festivals keep up amid the novel coronavirus pandemic, Hollywood is trying to find solutions for stranded filmmakers and their projects. One such effort came on April 2nd when South by Southwest unveiled a partnership with Amazon Prime Video to launch a film festival collection, where South by Southwest bound films could play exclusively on the platform in the U.S. for a 10-day period, the length of the now canceled Austin Fest. The collection, introduced by Southwest director of film Janet Pearson and Amazon Studios' Jennifer Salke, will not be subject to Amazon Prime's paywall, thereby offering exposure to a wider audience base. Anyone in the U.S. with an internet connection can watch. Then titles would have gotten in person at a festival. But filmmakers worry that screening their features online, even for a short window, could impact the future sales prospect of their titles, as they should. South by Southwest filmmakers who spoke with the Hollywood Reporter and all asked to remain anonymous due to fear of retribution are appreciative of the festival's efforts, but note that they see the potential platform as giving their hard-won independent feature away for free with little personal return. I love South by and I love Amazon, and I love that they're trying to do something, but it feels like this might hurt the filmmakers in the end, says a director behind one of the festival's narrative features. The movie will not be a part of the Amazon collection. Films that have already secured some form of distribution will likely have to opt out, while acquisition titles fear that opting in may impact their chances at finding a distributor later. The Hollywood Reporter spoke to two sales agents with former South by Southwest titles, and both immediately advised their clients against signing up for the collection. Unfortunately, showing things for free isn't going to make a dent, says one producer behind a South by Southwest documentary, which will not be a part of the Amazon program. They add, it's a really challenging time, but the best thing these platforms do is go back into business and start buying films. The Hollywood Reporter reviewed the email sent by festival programmers to accepted South by Southwest filmmakers outlining the Amazon Film Festival collection, which included a frequently asked questions section. In the communication, it was made clear to filmmakers that participating in the festival collection is not the equivalent of having Amazon as a distribution partner. Filmmakers have been directly liaising with South by Southwest, and the festival, not the streaming service, will be paying the screening fee promised to filmmakers that chose to participate. The compensation would be delivered after the projects complete the 10-day run on the service, but it was unclear to filmmakers what type of compensation that screening fee would be, which was troubling for filmmakers that were trying to accurately weigh the possible financial risks. We spent 3 years. Our budget wasn't big, but it was 3 years of our lives. We aren't going to kill the distribution chances for this film for an unknown sum, says one documentary director, who has chosen not to have his movie participate in the collection. The option to participate in the film festival collection has only been extended to narrative and documentary features, the kind of independent projects most likely to be seeking distribution, as well as selections in South by Southwest's episodic premieres section. Short films and episodic pilots will not be included at this time. Although this opportunity won't be right for everyone's overall film strategy, we are confident that it has significant value depending on your overall plans, reads the email that was signed from Pearson and the festival's other programmers. Other film festivals affected by coronavirus are now looking into how they can best pivot programming. On April 3rd, the postponed Tribeca Film Festival announced that festival titles that chose to opt in will be available to screen online for journalists and members of the industry via the Industry Extranet Resource Hub. After its cancellation, South by took a similar step with platform Shift72, the official secure online screening library, which was used to screen the festival's competition titles for judges and simultaneously allowed filmmakers to choose if their titles could be made available to press and buyers. It was revealed last week that CAA Media Finance is backing a new film market jointly launched by the San Sebastian and Zurich International Film Festivals, both of which take place in September, that will highlight titles selected from both South by Southwest and Tribeca. Prior to this, CAA floated the idea of a digital marketplace that would see film companies facilitate online screenings and deal negotiations via video conferencing in the event Cannes gets canceled. The French Fest has been since postponed with a new date yet to be determined. Canceled the week before it was due to begin, South by Southwest did not have the benefit of time to consider a postponement or put in place measures that would allow their festival an easy transition into the virtual space. We know there is no easy solution here, says a filmmaker. I hope Toronto and Sundance are paying attention. The deadline for interested filmmakers to finish all deliverables, including a release agreement to participate in Amazon's Film Festival collection, is by April 9th, less than 1 week after the South by Southwest filmmakers were made aware of the program. It is currently unclear, even for Amazon, how many films will be a part of the collection, but the streamer is aiming to mount the digital festival in late April. It has only been a month since the South by Southwest cancellation. There is still a lot of uncertainty, says one South by filmmaker. The person adds, as a filmmaker, it's hard to have patience right now, but the right thing will come. It didn't seem like the right thing. Here's Steve, I want to do my Oscar Goldman impression. Here's my thoughts on this. You know, the Joker once said, if you can do something well, you shouldn't do it for free. I know that right now we have a film that we want to sell, obviously, Tango Shalom. We have a sales agent, and all of this has put our plans to try and sell the film in limbo. And here's the thing. Anything that's streamed on the internet can be pirated. Piracy is one of the worst things facing independent filmmakers now. I keep thinking back to the late, great John Schnepp. He made his documentary, The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened? And the thing that I heard from him almost on a daily basis was how often he found his films on torrent sites for free. And he put, again, years of his life. He had investors that he had to pay back. And he was trying, you could buy his movie on both disc if you wanted to, or you could buy a digital package to download for $30. And one of the things that he found most disheartening was that our community, our greater, now I'm not saying that you guys, I'm not accusing you of anything, but it was our fan base, and I understand our fan base, especially on Collider Heroes at the time, we had a younger skewing fan base that it's used to torrenting things and all of that, but John had expenses and he had to pay people back, and he saw his movie had been downloaded over 1 million times worldwide, and those were all sales that he didn't get, that could have done. I mean, can you imagine if you're selling an indie download and say you're selling it even for $15 and you see 1 million downloads for free of your movie? I mean, think about that. It haunted him that, you know, he made this film that so many people were watching and he was not benefiting from it financially. I mean, and I understand as a filmmaker, you want to get your movie seen, but he had expenses and had to pay back his investors. He eventually did. He did sell enough of the movie digitally and on disc to be able to pay those investors back, but he certainly didn't make the kind of money that he wanted to be making off of the movie. And it was unfortunate, and it really bothered him. And he would go after torrent sites or people that were illegally downloading it, but I can't condone a company like Amazon showing filmmakers movies where they owe investors money, and they put in, like this one filmmaker said, 3 years of their lives. I mean, I certainly put in a lot of my time. It's taken Tango Shalom 5 years to get finished. You know, with fits and starts, stops and starts, raising money here, stopping for 4 months or 5 months here, and I think if Amazon were really to do the right thing, what they should do is create a filmmakers focus section on their streaming service and just outright buy the movies. You know, a lot of independent filmmakers have to come to grips with the fact they might never make all their money back. But if they're already being curated by South by, it's a pretty good bet most of those movies are worth acquiring. And if you think about how much a TV series, an hour-long TV series costs to make on any streaming service, you're looking at anywhere from, say, $3 million all the way up to, say, $15 million an episode. And let's say you're an independent movie maker and you've made your movie for, I don't know, for sake of argument, $1 million. $1 million. And if you're able to get, like my rule of thumb is when an investor invests in a project I'm interested in making or have made, I want to see my investors making 30% on their investment. So if somebody gave me $1 million to make a movie, I'm hoping to give them back $1,300,000. So they've made 30% on their investment, and it shows that I'm a good bet. Then I can go back to that investor and say, hey, I would like to borrow money again so we can make another movie. If you're going to stay the independent route, by the way, it's never that easy, just so you know. But for the sake of argument. So say you've made a movie for $1 million. If Amazon likes it, if they look at it, and you've already had the films curated by South by, and say you've got 10 movies or 20 movies, I think Amazon should just buy these films from filmmakers. And if it's $1 million movie, give them three times the budget. I think any filmmaker worth their salt would say, great, Amazon is buying my movie. I made my movie for $1 million. If I make $3 million on it, that means not only do my investors get made whole, but I can pay people. They might get a bump. I can pocket some money for myself, for my time, for the years and years I spent trying to make this movie. Then Amazon owns them outright. For $3 million, it's like having, and you brand it. And I think that's what Amazon should be doing. If somebody starts showing their movie for free on the internet, it doesn't matter what happens. It completely damages the further exploitability of that film. And also piracy is an issue. If anything is streaming on the internet, there's ways to capture it. And no site is entirely secure if somebody's interested in getting something. And I just think it's you're getting something for nothing. It's like when people say to you, hey, this would be really good for your portfolio, which I still get from people. After 30 years in the business, people are always saying, hey, would you come edit our project? We don't have any money, but it'd be good for your No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't be good for my portfolio. It wouldn't. And it's I hate that. And that's what all content is sort of been devalued. And I look at this and I think, man, you know what? Amazon certainly has enough money. And if they would create a Amazon brings you the best ongoing film festival of all, and they could split it into genres, and they could just be acquiring movies. And look, a lot of movies now that are at film festivals are like, they have A-list stars in them as well. And it's I'm talking about the independent filmmaker like Tango Shalom is truly an independent film. Now, we have investors that we must make whole. We have to make whole before anybody makes any money. I mean, I have a little, very, very small interest in the movie, and if I made a few bucks on it, that'd be a bonus. But we have investors that have to get paid back. So we're not in the habit of giving away. We can't give away our movie, and nor should any filmmaker. And I think that while I agree that South by and all these other filmmakers, you want to get exposure for your product, but who's going to buy your product after Amazon they've already streamed it? Part of the appeal of buying a film is to be able to debut it on whether you're a worldwide distributor and you're going to put it in theaters, or whether you're going to sell it to a streaming service. Getting it out there for that first time, having that world premiere is a big deal. And if you let Amazon run it, there is no more world premiere. There's no world premiere at any festival because it'll be available worldwide, presumably. And I think that, you've got to pay for the privilege to do it. And I understand everyone's like, well, these filmmakers are getting the exposure they need. You know what? Amazon should buy the films then. Buy them outright. And you know what? If it costs $1 million, buy it for $3 million. If it costs $5 million, give somebody 15, although 15, that's pretty steep. But if you're getting it and putting it on a streaming service, that means it's your movie in perpetuity throughout the universe forever. And if it's a good movie and people really like it, people will be watching it for presumably forever. And I think that that's what they should do. And as an independent filmmaker, it scares the hell out of me that this can become the norm, because it's already incredibly difficult, as John Schnepp found out. You make a movie for an audience and you think, wow, we had our built-in audience at Collider. We had the comic book audience, and they were the first people to download the material and keep it for themselves and not pay John. And I saw his frustration day in, day out. We'd go get lunch, and it was always the first thing out of his mouth. He's like, yeah, I had to go talk to 4 different torrent sites and demand they take my movies down. I mean, and it's still being torrented. And of course, Holly Payne, she's a producer on the film too. And she hasn't, same thing's happening. She's losing money every time somebody downloads that movie and doesn't pay for it. And I don't know. I read this and I couldn't get behind it. It's like, how much is time and effort and money and hopes and dreams? How much are they worth? Why should they be given away for free? I don't know. Just a thought. That's my Robservation for the day. I have a lot of other Robservations for the day, including, ladies and gentlemen, I got a message from one of my moderators. And I bet you're wondering who. Well, I'll tell you. It's Detective Jim, ladies and gentlemen. My man Jim Boyers sent me a DM, and I'm going to read it to you because that leads into the next story that I want to discuss. And it's kind of a long one, but, Jim doesn't always DM me, so when he does, or actually send me a text, I feel I'm going to share it because it's good. So allow me to read off my phone. This comes from our own moderator, Detective Jim Boyers. Hey, I'm not a businessman, accountant, or financial advisor, but I have an opinion about something, and I wanted your thoughts. I keep hearing you and John Campea talking about the AMC situation and bringing up possible bailouts or studios coming together to help them to avoid mutually assured destruction. My thought, which you finally almost hit on today, is that while they're not too big to fail in the eyes of the government as far as a bailout is concerned, I think they are certainly too big to fail in the respect that they have the financial interests of too many others attached to them. I don't think, unlike you guys seem to, that there is any way that all these companies with outstanding balances will call in the debts and take legal action against them. First of all, there is almost nothing to be gained from it. If they forced AMC into bankruptcy, they would get pennies on the dollar, if anything at all. However, it is almost 100% guarantee that if they just waive the debts for the duration of this crisis, AMC will bounce back, get back on their feet, begin making crazy profits, which Campea said they were just on the verge of when this hit, and everyone will make stupid money, from the cola and candy distributors to the people that supply the cups and containers. The landlords have zero incentive to evict them, seeing as these incredibly large spaces are not going to be rented in this situation anyway, and any outstanding bank loans would have to be held by the world's dumbest bank for them to consider foreclosing, because the same thing applies. No one is going to buy these properties in this climate. I may be oversimplifying things or totally missing something, but it seems to me that no one benefits from bringing financial action against AMC, whereas waiting for a few months will bring everyone profit. Thoughts? Well, Jim, what a fantastic, very cogent letter you have written there, sir. Well, it's a text, but I hand it to you, and once again I'm reminded why I'm so privileged to have you as a member and a moderator on this channel. You're absolutely correct. Now, in a way, I think your question is a microcosm of where we're at everywhere around the world. I mean, we're in an unprecedented financial situation. We might have 10 million people out of work. I will say that my own landlords, we asked them if instead of making a lump sum payment at one time like we normally do, if we could split it into two payments over a 2-week period of time. And they were great about it. They said, absolutely. And we're being able to do that. And they obviously they want us to stay here. We've been good tenants. We will have been here almost 3 years in May. And we keep the place great, and they really appreciate having us here. So I think it's going to be the same thing all over. We're seeing landlords, that guy in New York who owns 15 buildings, forgave his tenants for like the month of April. I don't know how long that can go on for him, but just said, nah, don't pay me my rent. Because what you're going to end up doing is you're going to have all these foreclosures, and you're going to have all of these people, they're going to have to be evicted. And that's not good for anyone. So we're in an unprecedented. It's one of the things I'm most fascinated by. What's going to happen to the world's economy? And I've said often, maybe it's just going to be a Thanos blip, that we will have had the world economy stop. I mean, I'm lucky in that I've got sort of a job. I mean, I do this, but I'm working on The Hills Run Red. That's a one-time payment, and once I'm finished on Friday, the only thing I really have is this, is working on this channel. But which is a little scary, and we're living in strange times. We'll see. But there was an article again today that addressed this very issue with AMC theaters and bankruptcy, which I thought I would also share with you today. So why don't we jump into that? So this was again today in the Hollywood Reporter. It was posted at 3:28 a.m. by George Salazai or George Zalai. MCAM Partners' Eric Handler downgrades the stock to a sell, estimating its cash burn rate in a no-revenue environment is running at $155 million per month, which likely keeps AMC liquid until June or July. Wall Street analysts are seeing a Chapter 11 bankruptcy filing from cinema giant AMC Theaters as increasingly likely. MCAM Partners analyst Eric Handler on Thursday downgraded his rating on shares of the exhibitor from neutral to sell, saying that bankruptcy appears likely. That followed Loop Capital analyst Alan Gould's Wednesday downgrade to a sell in a report that concluded, "We think bankruptcy is a distinct possibility, and at minimum, the company will require a highly dilutive financing." Handler in his Thursday report explained, "Based on our view that theaters will be closed until at least August and our belief that AMC lacks the liquidity to stay afloat until that time, we expect the company will soon be faced with filing for bankruptcy. Further fueling our liquidity concerns is AMC's decision to stop paying rents to landlords effective April. AMC, in which Chinese conglomerate Dalian Wanda Group owns a majority voting stake, has been looking for various ways to reduce costs. In late March, furloughing all of its 600 corporate employees, including CEO Adam Aron, following the closure of all its cinemas. It had earlier already cut its dividend by 85%. Handler said that even if AMC is able to tap government bailout funds, as management has signaled its plans to do, we believe the weight of its balance sheet will make for tough sledding, given the company's high leverage, thus making a reorganization inevitable. That comment was a reference to a potential Chapter 11 bankruptcy filing, which leads companies, their lenders, and a court to develop a restructuring plan. Handler highlighted that AMC, which he called the exhibition company we view with the least financial flexibility, at the end of 2019, had $265 million of cash on hand and $332 million available in its credit lines, for a total of nearly $600 million. We believe the company's monthly cash burn rate in a no-revenue environment is running at $155 million per month, which likely keeps AMC liquid until June or July, he concluded. Handler cut his fair value estimate for AMC stock from $7.50 to $1, and lowered his first quarter financial estimates. He cut his adjusted earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization estimates to a loss of $13 million, compared with a year-ago profit of $108 million. His revenue estimate went down to $931 million, reflecting a domestic box office decline of 26% as theaters have been shuttered since mid-March, and a 20% decline internationally. Handler also cut his 2020 outlook for AMC's adjusted EBITDA, whatever that is, I don't know what that is, to a loss of $239 million, operating costs or something, compared with a $771 million profit in 2019. A full-year revenue he expects to fall 44% to $3.5 billion. The revisions assume cinemas remain closed until August. So, yes, ladies and gentlemen, what's interesting about all of this, and I think, and I keep seeing these things, I mean, people are making these estimates as if there was some kind of, I don't know, people just stop going to the movies, when what you're dealing with is basically a complete shutdown of the world economy across the board. Luckily, certain productions, I mean, I know people that are working in writers' rooms. I was talking to a friend of mine today that was designing something he'd wanted to design his entire life, and he's actually still working, which was incredible for him. I'm very happy for him. But with this, it's a crazy, this is the kind of thing that obviously, can anybody stand to forgive their debts or forgive somebody's rent? I don't know, because everybody has to pay for things. It's a ripple effect, but we're going to have to, it kills me to think that AMC might close or be restructured and go into bankruptcy when it was no fault of their own. It wasn't, I mean, they were doing great things, renovating their theaters, putting Dolby in. I was really enjoying my experience going to AMC theaters more than I ever had. And it just seems so strange that, across the board, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm fascinated. I have no bearing. I can't even begin to tell you what the hell's going on. But it just seems, it's crazy out there, folks. Crazy. And I don't even know, I don't even know what to think, man. It's just, it is wacky. It's not wacky? You guys keep me going. So let's see what you guys have to say. Let's go all the way down to Calvin Bose. Calvin Bose sends in a tip and says, "What are your feelings on the upcoming Lower Decks?" Lower Decks is, of course, the upcoming Star Trek animated series, of which I know two people, the Benson sisters, Julie and Shauna Benson, are working on that show. I think they're working on that show. They're working on Lower Decks and not the Nickelodeon show, but they're working on Lower Decks. If they're not, I'm very sorry, Shauna and Julie. I still love you. But I think they are. Look, again, I want every Star Trek show, every new Star Trek show, I want to be great. I really want it to be great. Lower Decks obviously was an episode of The Next Generation, which was a good episode of The Next Generation, showing what the rest of the crew is doing when you're not dealing with our command heroes, the command crew and the people the people at the top of the pyramid, when you're dealing with the everyday folk. I mean, if it's a good show, I'll like it. I really hope that it is. I think that Star Trek is a huge universe. There's room to move. Like, if you wanted to do The Office in space, as long as it's well written and clever, I'm all for it. And I feel that way. Look, I went into every episode of Picard wanting it to be great. If you remember, when it first started, I was dubious, but I'm like, okay, I didn't hate it. As it went along, it devolved for me into gobbledygook that was just an affront to all things Star Trek. But it started out, I had hope for it, just like I wanted Discovery to be good, and just like I want Lower Decks to be good. I hope it is. I never want any movie, animated show, TV series, I never want anything to suck. I go in and wanting everything to be great, because this is the creative work of other human beings and other people, and I want it to always be great. I never want anything to be bad. I never feel that way. And I go into everything. Every day is a new day. I never look back and go, oh, this sucked. Why? That's counterproductive. I look always forward. I'm always moving forward, thinking about the future, because that's where we'll spend the rest of our lives. And let's face it, there's a lot of cool stuff in the world. There's even a lot of cool stuff I haven't even got to yet. There's foreign films I haven't seen. There's TV shows. I've never seen Stargate. People tell me Stargate's good. There's always something to look forward to. And when it comes to Star Trek, I've been looking forward to Star Trek my entire life. Sometimes I didn't like it. Other times I did. But I always look forward to Star Trek, just like I always look forward to James Bond movies. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not so good, but I love the James Bond franchise. I will always love the Star Trek franchise. Always. I love Star Trek. I love the original series. That's Star Trek, and moving forward, whenever I'm given new Star Trek, I'm always going to look to love it. That's my go-to position. That's what I do normally. And so I'm always going to go into a new Star Trek series, animated, whatever, and want to love it. If you include Lower Decks, if you include short treks, there's now been 3 consecutive series for Star Trek that I have not liked, which I don't like that I don't like them. This is not good. This is not a good look. I'm not happy about it. Willow sends in a tip and says, if you were making a movie about the current pandemic, what would it be about? A political drama on the government response? A smaller story like the incident with Crozier? A made-up story that's set in the backdrop of the pandemic? Or something else? You know what? I would probably tell the story of... sure, there's probably... There are 10,000 stories in the naked pandemic city, which you could probably tell. But I would be most interested in telling a story about whether it was a conspiracy story about a group of people trying to profit off of this. I heard today that inordinately blacks and Latinos are statistically harder hit than, I guess, Caucasians or Asians or other groups. But I just heard blacks and Latinos. And I was thinking to myself, the conspiracy theorist in me, or the person that likes conspiracy theories, you think, oh, it was engineered to go after ethnic groups, and that could be an interesting story. Like the coronavirus pandemic, the thing that I've most been telling people jokingly is that what better way to prepare, like we know that any day now is going to be First Contact Day. The Independence Day city-destroying ships are going to be landing and taking positions in front of all of our biggest cities or atop all of our biggest cities. Well, what better way than to get us all inside to mitigate the response when everybody's already sequestered away, that this pandemic was released because it was a global pandemic that could be released with a great cover story. Yes, it came from China, it came from Wuhan, but really, just like in Close Encounters, when they dropped this sleeping gas and said it was nerve gas, and the government wanted everybody away from Devil's Tower, that's what they've done, but on a global scale, to wait for our alien overlords to arrive, captive state style, something like that. Maybe that's what I would do. Or something along those lines. I mean, yes, you could go and tell the stories about people that lost their lives or the gallant efforts. I mean, I heard that 100 doctors have died in Italy. I'm just thinking, my God, all that, the brain trust, the collective schooling that was lost, and these professionals who are on the front line. I mean, talk about heroism. My God, those doctors trying to save lives of people, knowing full well that their lives are on the line, and they did it anyway. That, to me, is incredibly heroic. You could tell that movie, tell that story, kind of like the Kate Winslet character in Contagion. By the way, I love Contagion. I've watched it twice in the last couple weeks, and what a great movie, by the way. It's just so well done, so clinical. But that's kind of what I would tell that story. You know, how we need people off the streets because nobody's like, I went and walked my dogs last night, and it was just eerie. You know, I did a little circle in Pasadena, and there's a street called Colorado Boulevard. I mean, there was just nothing. There was no activity. And you know that everyone, it was like being on Deneva in the Star Trek episode Operation Annihilate, when the landing party knew that all the people were there. They're just inside. You know, they're suffering, the neural parasites are controlling them. And it was just weird. I felt like I was on Deneva, knowing that everybody was home, and you'd pass, like I passed one guy, and you'd smell like whatever he was, like the sweet. He was smoking like one of those cherry cigarettes. He was vaping, but you could smell that. It smelled really good, and you know, you can't see him, and then you look over and you see him take a drag, and you realize, you know, he's 20 feet away from you, sitting on his front porch, just wanting to. The air in LA is so crisp and beautiful, and it was a break in the rain, and just enjoying being outside, and no one knew he was there. I didn't know he was there until the dogs are there in front of me as I let out their leashes when I walk them. And I could smell his, but so you know that there's people all around you. They're just all sequestered inside. Made me think of Operation Annihilate from the first season of Star Trek, the original series, when all the Denevans were inside. That's how I think. So there you go. Miles Ellis. Wow. Miles Ellis. Wow. It's incredibly generous of you, sir, to support the channel in that way. Thank you very, very much. I very much appreciate that. I'm flattered and I'm humbled. So thank you, sir. Hey, Rob, just wanted to say thank you for the recommendation on Tales from the Loop. The only thing that sucks is it said it was rated Y somewhere, so we watched it with the kids, which was great for the first episode, but by episode 2, we realized it's not. Yeesh, Miles. I don't know how old your kids are, but I would assume they're on the younger side. I'm very sorry about that. I hope I didn't give you the impression that it didn't have adult-oriented subject matter in there. But maybe it's a teaching moment. Maybe it's the time that you can say, well, kids, let's have this talk. What did you guys think? Did you kick him out of the room, though? What'd you do? Wow. Yeah, I don't know what to say to that other than, I mean, I guess they have to start somewhere. I don't know. Wow. See, I've never had kids myself, even though I live with 2 teenage girls, Elizabeth's daughters. So it's definitely given me a taste of what it's like to be in that kind of a position. But I can't imagine what it's like when kids get to see something like, I still, even though I've never had kids of my own, I sometimes have dreams about not wanting my kids to have seen Star Wars or something until I show it to them. And they come back from a friend's house and they just watch the home video of it. Wow, we streamed Star Wars on Disney Plus, and getting angry, being like, oh my God, this was my thing as a dad. I wanted to show it to you the right way. Show you the original 77 version. So even though dreaming about having kids is not the same as having kids. I think I understand what you mean, sir. And by the way, once again, thank you so much for supporting the channel. It's very, very generous of you, and it's very much appreciated. Star Wars Rocks sends in a tip and has a couple two-part question. Looking back on Disney's Star Wars trilogy now, I just realized that what if, when they were planning the first movie, they thought, hey, you, remember the Star Wars Infinities comics from the 90s? Why don't we just make them into movies and just change some of the major plot points from it, like killing Han Solo in the first movie, Luke in the second movie, and Leia in the third movie? Because in the comics, they only killed off Luke in the first issue of Episode 5 of the comic line. That's definitely something they could have done. I don't know, but maybe. I just wish then that the movies were better than they are. I like those comics. Some of them I did. Paul Gilmore sends in a tip and says, some people call me the space cowboy. Some call me the gangster of love. Some people call me Maurice. Yes, I was just listening to that song before your broadcast, and now it'll be stuck in my head for the rest of the week. Have a splendid day, Rob. Hugs and kisses. I love Steve Miller. The Steve Miller Band is so great. And I love that song. Now you've got it stuck in my head. Thanks for the earworm, dude. Paul, you've infected me with an earworm. I can't believe it. It's worse than the one on SETI Alpha 5. Terrible. Actually, it wouldn't be on... Yeah, it would be SETI Alpha 5. Stubble McShave sends in a tip and says, a companion piece to your axiom about cult movies. Fandom can't be built from the top down. It must be built from the bottom up. That, my friend, Stubble, that is a great axiom. I can't take credit for it because it's your axiom, but you're absolutely right. Yes, what Stubble is referring to is I said you can't set out to make a cult movie. A cult movie becomes a cult movie when people rally around it or become fans of it on it for its own sake. And if you try and set out to make a cult movie, I think you've already failed, because it's like when you call yourself an artist. I used to hate in college when people said, oh, I'm an artist. I'm like, yeah, but I understand. You can use the term, like being an artist, I understand as a term like I do a lot of painting or sculpture. That makes you an artist. But when you walk around going, I'm an artist, like that's for society to decide. That's for history to decide. You know, if you're a painter or a sculptor, I don't care what medium you work in, then you're working in that medium. But if you've decided to tell everybody that you are an artist, I think that's not fair. I think it's for someone else to decide and anoint you to be an artist. That's just me, though. Let's see. Danny Chadwick sends in a super chat and says, cheers from the coronavirus Uber Wars SLC front. That's like being an SLC punk, but different. Well, thank you for that, Danny. SLC punk. That makes me want to watch that movie. It really does. Well, let me go and look over and see. I got letters for you, folks. I have some letters. And let me go down here and see what I got for you today. Let me just jump over into the letters. And let's see what people are here saying. Guys have been killing it with the letters lately, can I just say? This letter comes from Rick Green. It's a short one. He says, hey, Rob, this may seem odd, but I've made a makeshift theater in my home with a large screen TV, black drapes over stuff, a small concessions basket, popcorn, and a nice chair. In a lot of ways, it feels like I'm going to the movies because I can take a break from sitting at the computer all day. Best of all, there's no 24 minutes of previews before the movie starts. Maybe it's a bit sad, but it's the best I can do during these times. Well, Rick, I'd say you're doing quite well. Why don't you make a video of your makeshift movie theater, send it to me, and I'll play it on this show. I think, look, we all have to amuse ourselves. I think after I finish delivering Hills Run Red, I'm going to go back to sanding my Starship Vega Estes model rocket that I'm making, and I'm going to finish it and hang it right up there in the observatory, right next to my Interceptor E and my Interrogator G flying model rockets right up there, and my Alien Invader, my Estes Alien Invader. So, yeah, show us. Share it. Come on, Rick. Thanks for writing in. That's now I want to see it. Now I want to see it. And you know what? So does everybody else. You know who else is writing in? Omar 94, one of my most prolific letter writers now. Hi, Rob. I finally saw John Carter on Monday after years of debating whether to see it or not. I quite enjoyed it, and see why you and John like it so much. I would have liked to have seen more, as Taylor Kitsch said how the second script was fucking awesome, and Andrew Stanton lamented the fact that he didn't get to make the sequels, as the plan was to have a John Carter trilogy. I sent a letter which you answered, thanks by the way, about possibly remaking or rebooting John Carter, since nobody knows what is happening with Star Wars, and you mentioned how you believe Disney killed that film in order to get Lucasfilm and Star Wars, as well as Deja Thoris having potential to be a great Disney princess. This has me wondering, considering how expensive the movie was, do you think it would have been better if John Carter was an animated movie instead of live action? The previous Edgar Rice Burroughs adaptation from Disney, Tarzan, was animated, so maybe John Carter could have done better as an animated film. Deja Thoris could have actually been more of a Disney princess if the movie was animated, joining Snow White, Cinderella, Aurora, Ariel, Belle, Jasmine, Elsa, and Anna, and Rapunzel. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Well, Omar, I got great big love for John Carter. I mean, I grew up reading Princess of Mars and the other Barsoom novels. And, of course, let's see, look at this. Wait. I mean, come on, man. Marvel. This is the Marvel omnibus of John Carter, Warlord of Mars. And it's like, how, if Disney is making a film about this, I mean, I understand it's just more for grist for my mill that they killed John Carter on purpose, so George Lucas would have no reason not to sell to Disney. And that's what I think. It was wrong-headed. I think there's room for both, but I mean, come on, man. How do you make a movie and call it just John Carter when it should be John Carter, Warlord of Mars? And I don't care, because people say, wow, movies about Mars, we're not making any money. That's like the dumbest shit ever. I look at this. How cool is this? I mean, John Carter and Deja Thoris. Who doesn't want to see that, man? And by the way, what does this remind you of? This is 70s comics at their finest. I mean, a little Star Wars, anyone? I'm telling you, I'm right about my theory. Bob Iger killed John Carter on purpose. He murdered it so he could buy Star Wars. But I would love to see it again. You know what? People love John Carter. I'd love John Carter. Why don't they make the other two? I mean, they own Star Wars now. Heck, they need another franchise. Why not? Hell, if the scripts are that good, why not? Why not? Anyway, Jermaine K. is here with a letter. Hello, Rob. On Robservations 384, you spoke of a schism that exists in current genre fandom. I think you're 100% right about that. There is a divide, and in my opinion, it stems from the blatant disrespect of canon. Fans who value the history and lore of Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, and others now have platforms to voice their displeasure. The fans who aren't bothered by canon being disregarded can voice that viewpoint as well. And there's the schism. The point of this letter, however, is to offer a theory on a deeper problem. I feel the whole state of Star Wars, Star Trek, and Doctor Who is shining a light on a societal problem. As a whole, there isn't enough value put on history. Whether it's movies, books, or TV shows, our current culture is very focused on the present. We binge watch a piece of content, then move on to the next. Sure, there are networks like TCM that value old movies, but that's quickly becoming a rarity. How many young people would choose to watch The 7-Year Itch or Them? One look at a giant ant special effect and they'd move on to a more modern film. A friend of mine doesn't like movies from the 80s for that reason. How many classics like The Birds will be ignored by future generations? Unfortunately, Star Trek and Star Wars have been sucked into this sad vortex. If I express my disdain for The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker in this letter, it would be at least 8 paragraphs longer. I won't do that, but I will leave you with Kylo Ren's infamous quote, "Let the past die. Kill it if you have to." That line seems to be a fitting illustration of the current place many popular franchises find themselves in. That's from Jermaine K. Well, Jermaine, a fine letter, sir. And I think you're absolutely right. By the way, somebody in the chat called this a Snake Plissken jacket. Honest to God, I'd never thought of it like that, but now I'm never taking it off. Never taking it off. President of what? That's not very funny, Pliskin. Thank you. So thank you for that. Now I'm hearing the Escape from New York theme. Dun 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 dun. Wow 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 wow. I don't know. I can't do John Carpenter music very well, but he can, and you can go watch him play that live. There's a YouTube link, and it's awesome. But anyway, what a digression. Here's something I think is a strange thing about the modern age. And I really think it's because, again, I've tried to explain many times on this show how it's hard to convey to people what a shock. If I was an imagination connoisseur from the time I was a little kid. And when I was a little kid, I made no distinction about things. Like, I didn't not watch Twilight Zone because it was black and white. That's just how the Twilight Zone was. And I loved the Twilight Zone. The Twilight Zone blew my mind. And I saw it probably around the same time I first saw Star Trek, maybe a little later. And the first Twilight Zone episode I remember seeing was To Serve Man, the famous episode that ends with, it's a cookbook. Even as a kid, Canamit. I never put two and two together, the Canamits. Like, I think about it now, I still love the episode. And I love Richard Kiel as the lead Canamit. But it's like, come on, man. It's crazy to think that I didn't see that. But when it was over, my young mind, I want to say my 6-year-old brain, was grappling with what just happened in that episode and the ramifications of it. And I just thought that was the greatest thing I'd ever seen. And so, I wanted to go back and the same was true. I vividly remember seeing as a little kid Frankenstein on TV for the first time, and the arm, like the hand, the living hand crawling around. I was like, I'm like, oh my God. Like, it never occurred to me that I wouldn't watch a movie because they were black and white, which meant they were old. I've never understood that. It was like, when I was a kid, I had to see every single science fiction and horror movie I could. Every one. And like, I've often told the story about how when post Star Wars, this book came out by a guy named Alan Frank, Sci-Fi Now. And it was like a pictorial history of the science fiction film, but it had horror movies in it and fantasy films in it. And I read that book. It came out, I want to say 1978. And I'm like, I got to see every movie in this book. And I think I have, like I've told people, except one, which is Richard Lester's The Bed Sitting Room, which I actually own on Blu-ray. I own The Bed Sitting Room on Blu-ray, and I've never watched it, because if I did, then I would have seen all the movies that are in Sci-Fi Now. And when I was a kid, I made a promise to myself I would see all those movies. And if I see The Bed Sitting Room, if I watch it, then I will have ended that chapter of my life. And I kind of want to not do that. That's why I haven't read Andrew Vaux's final Burke novel. Even though I bought it when it came out. I've read all of his other Burke novels. But I can't bring myself to read Another Life, because I'm sure Burke dies, the main character. And I don't want to know. I want to believe he's still alive somewhere. How weird is that? There's some weird psychological insight into how I think. But I just don't understand it. And I know there's twice as much to watch now as when I was a kid. And that's part of the problem. There's so much content. But I loved seeing where things came from, and when you'd finally see things, like I remember seeing Fritz Lang's Metropolis for the first time. And it was so much fun to finally see. I was so excited about seeing it. It was like, oh my God. Because, you always saw pictures, especially in the wake of Star Wars, there was always a picture of C-3PO that would be redolent. They'd put it right next to the Robotrix from, like Maria, Robo Maria or whatever from Metropolis. You had to see it, and how exciting it was to see that. I just don't think, nowadays there's no, especially amongst imagination connoisseurs. Remember, when I was a kid, we didn't have things as sophisticated. No one had seen Star Wars and Alien. Or even the kind of things that we saw in Dawn of the Dead. And when you already have those things, it's really hard to go back, unless I was already conditioned by my childhood to go back and watch older things and get something out of them. So when I put on a black and white movie, I don't have a built-in psychological aversion thinking, ooh, it's old. I don't think that at all. And yet, if you've grown up now, I think if you've grown up in this day and age, in a world where you can stream Jurassic Park and the Matrix and the Star Wars movies and the Aliens movies and whatever, it's really hard now to go back and watch things that are old. And I've said this a million times, and you've heard me say it on the show ad infinitum, and it bums me out, to be honest. I really wish that wasn't the case. It does bum me out. So yeah, it is kind of a bummer. And I don't see that there's any way around that, because the thing is, there's so many new things now to watch as you get back. If you're a young person watching movies and you love film, and you've been watching almost the last say 50 years of movies since 1970, you've got a lot of great movies there. And when you go back, it's gonna be tough. I mean, there's still movies I think people can watch, like All About Eve, like Sunset Boulevard, like Double Indemnity. If you're willing to sit down, and they work the same way that modern films work. But last night's movie, Unwinding About Movies, La Dolce Vita, a movie that I've watched and puzzled over and looked at, I would be hard pressed to recommend that film to anybody that's under 25. I mean, people might. Now, if you're under 25, like, oh, come on, Rob, I can watch that. I'm not saying that necessarily is about you personally, but I think generally it would be very hard to have somebody to ask them to go back and watch my beloved Antonioni Ennui trilogy, or to watch, say, something like last year, Marion Bad, another movie which I really liked. And I love, actually, last year, Marion Bad. And it would be hard to tell somebody to go back and watch that movie, because you really have to have the mindset. And now there's nothing analogous to those movies. I don't think there's no one making Fellini's La Dolce Vita now, so you can't really point to anything. And when you're watching it, like with Elizabeth, she was frustrated at first watching the movie, and I totally understand that. And it's just tough, man. It is tough. Tough. Stubble McShave says, he sends in a tip and says, Roth and Merle had a live show on Screen Junkies where Roth said she had info that network TV was desperate for content. They floated the possibility that networks would pull content from streaming, such as CBS pulling Star Trek, since All Access hasn't done well. I could definitely see that happening. All Access, why would you join All Access? They're not, unless you want to watch all these other CBS shows. I mean, I believe it. What do they have? They're putting on Paramount movies on CBS now. They're putting Raiders and Titanic, which is weird, which is strange. Oh, Hassan is sending a tip. By the way, Hassan had sent me a very nice message that he said something about watching my show and sending in tips, and that his friends would think it's crazy that, as Hassan put it, that he was sending a tip to that gringo in California. And I wanted to add that to my my Viceroy of Verisimilitude and end with the gringo in California. I didn't want to do that and piss anybody off, but I laughed my ass off when Hassan said that. So Hassan sends in a tip and says, hello, my gringo from California. It's good that you're running out of junk food and alcohol. We must stay healthy as well. Well, I do go out and walk and enjoy the beautiful air. And I'm mostly kidding. How are you coping with this? I've been listening to a lot of music, and watching Better Call Saul Season 5 is brilliant. Well, Hassan, I've had so much work to do. Like I said, I've been working on the Netflix show that I was working on. I actually did my part remotely the other day, which was pretty cool. I was editing over Zoom with a few people on the show, and that was interesting. That was kind of fun. And I have to say, the shows, I've been seeing some finished stuff, man, and hearing the music that's being created for it. Boy, is it cool for what it is. It's really, really cool. Very proud to be a part of that. So that's fun. So I've been doing that, and, it's going to get down. Like, I feel like at some point, maybe next week, I got to bust out my 3-foot Randy Cooper Star Destroyer model and, like, put it up here and build it. The only thing is I need to get a Dremel, because I want to put fiber optics in it and light it all up. But I don't have a Dremel, and I don't know if Kickcraft is open, and I don't have the fiber optics. So maybe I'll just build my Randy Cooper Galileo. They're garage kits, but cool. As a matter of fact, since I'm talking about that, Let's see. Randy Cooper. Models. I'm going to put this in the live chat because this stuff will, if you guys, oh, here we go. You got to see Randy Cooper's models. They're amazing. So what Randy Cooper does is he manufactures kits, resin kits, garage kits. They're amazing, but don't say I didn't warn you. If you're so inclined, they're expensive, and they're definitely worth checking out. Look at his models. He just finished one, this really cool scratch-built Home Depot thing, but his models are incredible. And he's just, if you look down, you can buy his models. They're so worth doing. They're so well done. It's just incredible. But yeah, I bought a few of his models back when I was making more money about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I bought 3 of his models, and I haven't built them yet. That's what modelers do. You build models, and you have them. You know, you're waiting for a rainy day or a pandemic. So yeah, so that's what I've been doing, Hassan. Can I say gringo in California? You're gringo in California. I don't want to be offensive in any way, but I love that you say that. And thank you for supporting the channel. Jason S. sends in a tip and says, I wonder if this Halloween, if college students will be screening at their college... I wonder if this Halloween, if college students will be screaming at their college professors over Halloween costumes or pronouns or people's outfits that they deem as cultural appropriation. Will safe spaces still exist? Man, you know what? What happened in academia, I don't know. I believe in sensitivity to others. I really do. But I also believe that on Halloween, sometimes wearing offensive costumes is kind of the point. You know, you're celebrating what? You can celebrate monsters that decapitate people, and you can be the corrupted soul. You could be a young Linda Blair who's been possessed by the devil and is carrying around a bloody crucifix and all that, but somehow other people are offended by this. I think that's kind of the point of Halloween is we can hold these things up and realize, unless, of course, you're wearing a jackbooted Nazi uniform because you're a fascist and believe that the Third Reich should come back. I mean, that's one thing. But it's a good question. I mean, where are we going to be? Finding Neo sends out... So I don't know. To answer your question, I don't know where we're going to be. I hope we're going to be in maybe a better place. Finding Neo sent in a $1.99 super chat and said, have you checked out Red Letter Media's channel? Well, I love Red Letter Media. I've been watching them for years and years and years. Have they done something new today? Is there something... well, hang on. Let's see what they've done. I'm still waiting. I am waiting on pins and needles for the... let me see. For their review of Picard. The final episodes of Picard. Well, Veronica, I watched that, which is hysterical. I don't see that they've done they've not. Maybe they're waiting. Maybe it's going to be their Apocalypse Now reviews. Wow, I didn't know they're on Redbubble. They're making. Wow, I like that. I didn't know they had shirts. But yes, I'm a huge fan of Red Letter Media. I've been a fan of Red Letter Media since first discovering Plinkett's review of Generations. And I've been a fan ever since. I love those guys. Oh, they kill me. They kill me. But I mean, not literally kill me, but I love them. Dancing Dog sends in a tip and says, Robert, speaking of Tetrasound, your thoughts on Starman, a.k.a. Supergiant. The Starman films were a staple of the Creature double feature on Channel 56 in Boston during my youth. The Majin films were also a staple. Majin resembles Fred Stanford. Who doesn't love those movies? The Majin movies, my God. You know, let's see. I wonder if somebody knows what I'm talking about. Let's see. Hang on. Yeah, I mean, how could you not love that stuff? I love that stuff. And Majin, it's the Dragon Ball Wiki. Yes, I'm looking for the kind of image I would want to put up there, and why is it not giving to me? Majin films. Yeah, Daimajin. Return of Majin. I love this guy. You know, he looks like he's a Ray Harryhausen character, even though he's a giant. Ooh, look at this. You can get... Oh, this makes me want to get... Here you go. Let's see. These are... The Daimajin movies are Japanese kaiju films. And let me get this, and I can... Here, I'm going to put this on. I'm going to put this live up here so people know what we're talking about. Here, wait a minute. Now that I've captured this, give me a minute, and I'll put this up because, we should all bow before. Let's see if wait a minute. What is today? Here we go. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Here's who I'm talking about. Look at this guy. Oh, let's make him bigger. Let's make that dude bigger. What do you say? So we can gaze upon his visage. Look at that dude. Yeah. No, I as a kid, I love these movies. And again, I was a huge fan of Japanese science fiction in all of its myriad forms. I loved that. I'm a huge, huge fan. Again, there's a whimsy in, I don't know where it comes from, but there's a whimsy in Asian fantasy that we don't have in America. And I really responded to it as a kid. I mean, that's why I've always loved this kind of thing. And I've got, where do I have one of the greatest books I have. I love this book. Ijai Tsuburaya, Master of Monsters. This book, if you like Japanese science fiction, this book is so dope. I mean, first of all, it's just a rad book, but I mean, look at this. Come on. I mean, look at that. I mean, growing up loving this stuff, this book, I cannot tell you how great this book is. And it gets into things later like Ultraman, Varan, the Unbelievable. I mean, look at this. How cool is that? I mean, every kid wants to have their own miniature city. So I can't, if you're at all interested in I mean, look at this. Come on, man. Who would not want a photograph of themselves in a miniature city with Mothra? Man, I would. How awesome. You just look at this. Look at that. War of the Gargantuans. I mean, this is the best stuff ever. Look at this book. Matango. The Mushroom People. Have you guys seen Matango? Look at that. I don't know. Obviously, you don't want to sit here and watch me read this book. But yeah, one more time. If you guys like Japanese science fiction, you have to get this book. This book is so dope. Anyway, so Dancing Dog, there you go. You sent in another tip and you say, correct shock treatment attempted to be a cult movie. Valley of the Dolls is a true cult film, a big budget 20th Century Fox film that is a hot mess, but it has the beautiful Sharon Tate in all of her beauty. Valley of the Dolls, yes, and I'm a particular fan of Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. If you've ever seen that, I love Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. So, yes, you can't set out to make a cult movie. I've used shock treatment as an example of something I couldn't stand it. Dancing Dog goes on and says, Robert, why aren't trailers clever anymore? Look at Hitchcock's trailers for Psycho and the Birds. Look at Steve Martin's Button Meter teaser trailer for Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. Look at the original West Side Story teaser. Where's the art gone? Well, it becomes... I'm very disappointed by the marketing. By the way, you can see I didn't even realize if you look closely right between, as much as I like Japanese, look, it's Minya right there. Godzilla, Minya. Godzilla's kid right on my head. Now that's something I can never unsee. Movie marketing, it becomes a trend. I mean, I think of some of the great modern trailers. The trailer for Alien is still one of the great trailers of all time. And I think it's just a style. They get into a rut. Trailers are what they are now. But, one of the great trailers of all time is Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho trailer, where he actually narrates, he takes you around the locations for the movie. And it's great. It's really great. But only Alfred Hitchcock could have gotten away with that because obviously... did any director have the kind of persona that Alfred Hitchcock did publicly? I mean, obviously because of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. I just think, again, we live in a different time, a different world. I don't know if it's a better world, but a different world. Dancing Dog, you send in another, and you say, as much as I love nostalgia, I say live in the past, die in the past. It's nice to check the rearview mirror every once in a while. However, stare at it, and you don't see the truck crossing the lane in front of you, and whammo. Nostalgia is cool, but... Well, I mean, here's my thing about nostalgia. I don't see it as nostalgia necessarily because, when I go back and watch something that was made before I was born, I don't have any nostalgia for it. It's like I was talking about in terms of John and I were talking about time travel, and I was saying one of the things I really loved about Endgame was they set their own a rule I tend to believe in terms of time travel being real. The time traveler, by traveling into the past, is actually going into his future. The time traveler is he's moving forward in his own life, and by going into the past, he is going into his own future. That's, as you take one step forward, you're moving into the future, which means you can't go back to your past and change it. You're in your future already, so all you can do is go back to your present. And I like that about Endgame. I thought that was cool, but I kind of feel that way about nostalgia. If I was sitting here thinking about, well, let me just talk about my high school years. I mean, I've always thought about moving forward, but that doesn't mean I don't enjoy remembering or looking at art from the past to find out where we've come or to examine what was so interesting. There's a great thing in Devs. This 7th episode of Devs, man, I'm telling you, it was like the first time I saw that Hubble Deep Field photograph when I was working on this Star Trek, the Star Trek experience. I had, and I tried to put this, there's actually a line about this in Free Enterprise. When I was working on the Star Trek experience in Vegas, I was working at Gary Goddard's Landmark Entertainment in North Hollywood at the time, on the corner of Magnolia and Lancashire, in the building there. And that deep field picture came out, I think, in National Geographic, the Hubble Deep Field, and it showed what looks like stars, but it wasn't. It's all these galaxies. And I put it on the wall, and I really had like a week where I would just contemplate. It was like being in the total perspective vortex when Zaphod Beeblebrox gets thrown into the total perspective vortex. And it put the zap on my mind. I'm like, I really had a hard time grasping my reality. Why should I do anything looking at that Hubble deep field photograph? But then, cooler heads prevailed, and I remembered how Dr. Manhattan believed in the thermodynamic miracle of life and that all of us are individuals and in a certain sense we're as unique as a whole galaxy. So you got to move forward. Anyway, I don't know what I'm saying, or the point I'm trying to make is, all I know is, what can I say? I don't even know what I'm saying. So there you go. Mark Evans sends in a tip and says, that's why the term imagination connoisseurs describes us as a community so well. We grew up with these advances with tech and so have a better appreciation for the old and the new, but expect more too from the days when they couldn't lean excessively on CGI, etc. Mark, I totally agree with you. We did grow up and like someone asked earlier about them, watching them. Like, when I watched them, I liked watching them. The first time I saw them, I don't think them ever really scared me, except the noise, man. You can't ever unhear the noise of the ants from them. But I still liked them. And as somebody that, look, you show me a miniature model of something, I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool. I will always love models and miniatures, and it goes all the way back to my childhood. Being able to get like a Corgi car or build a model of a reproduction of a spaceship or something, like having the Enterprise and flying it in front of you. I mean, it never got old. It never got old. It still never gets old. And nowadays, kids aren't building models anymore. What do they care? Like I've said, excuse me, when you can fly a photorealistic Millennium Falcon around in a video game, why build a model of one? I mean, I built my Millennium Falcon model, a 1/72nd scale. I mean, the Bandai Perfect Grade version hadn't come out, but I've got my 1/72nd scale fine molds, and it took me like a month to paint. But I have it. It's not in the Robservatory. It's inside still. I need to bring it out here, and I can play with it in front of you. But yeah. So yeah, I think you're right though. That's why imagination connoisseurs. I just made that term up. I thought it was cool. I thought it was a cool thing. I'm like, what are you? I wanted to have some. I like our catchphrases, and I wanted to have something to say. And what are imagination? What are we imagination warriors? And I'm like, no, we're connoisseurs. That's what it is. So that is a phrase I should copyright. Can you do that? I guess you probably can't. But everyone knows you are all imagination connoisseurs here, so there you go. All Metal Mike sends in a super chat and says, Rob, did you ever watch 2015's Man Up with Simon Pegg and Lake Bell? In my humble opinion, excellent acting and funny romantic comedy, stands up to multiple viewings. I did not. And somebody was did you ask me about that yesterday? Somebody else was asking me about that. Maybe it's just a coincidence. And wow, I need to catch up with that. Man Up, it sounds good to me. I like Lake Bell. I love Simon Pegg, so I'll have to watch that. I'm unfamiliar with that. I'll have to watch a trailer. Journey's End sent in a super chat and said, what are your thoughts on the weaker Trek films like Generations in comparison to J.J. Kurtzman Trek? Do they look better now compared to modern Trek? I am not a fan of Generations at all. I think I have the same kinds of problems with Generations. First of all, yes, was it nice to see Kirk in that movie? Yeah. Having him die falling off a bridge, not so cool. I think the whole premise of a giant energy ribbon traveling through space, which is actually a doorway, presumably something in the ribbon reads your mind and it concocts a reality for you to live in that is based on your dreams and hopes and desires. Again, none of that makes sense. To me, the Nexus ribbon in Generations is an impossible premise. And I think it's all very dumb, and none of it really makes any sense. But I don't blame Ron and Brandon for writing it, because they were also writing All Good Things, and the pressure was on. It's such a, I really like, I like the way it's shot. You know, I like seeing certain scenes. Watching the Enterprise saucer section crash is fine. It's kind of fun to watch from an effects standpoint. I like seeing the miniature landscape and the saucer section crash into it, but it's not a very good movie, and it's certainly not a great ending for Kirk. And it's just, again, I would say Generations is full of gobbledygook. It has a few scenes I like. I love the opening scene in the beginning when they shot it on location on a real sailing ship. I mean, I like all that, and I like some of the interaction in the movie, and I certainly love the way the film is lit, but I don't think it's very good. I just don't dig it. I think modern Generations, though, at least it didn't. I mean, it's got monumentally stupid things. Like, for instance, I'll give you something I can't stand it. When Soren shoots his Estes model rocket at the sun, at the Viridian sun, at the end of that movie, the rocket launches, and it takes light 8 minutes to go from our sun to us. 8 minutes at the speed of light. Now, unless Soren has built a rocket capable of faster than light travel, his rocket, he blasts off and it hits the sun immediately, pretty much. And I'm like, come on, man. Give me a break. Even if the Death Star was firing at the Viridian sun, it would take 8 minutes to hit it. And I just I wasn't down with that. There's just the stupid. There's just a lot of stupid in that movie. And I can't get behind it. As a matter of fact, I think all of the Next Generation films lack something. Because, again, you needed a screenwriter to come in and write a story that... Star Trek is... That's why when I was watching Devs, I couldn't help but think the whole time. I'm like, what if Devs, you just played... Basically, sure, the details would all have to be different, obviously, because it doesn't take place in the modern day in San Francisco. But what if you did Devs and it was still... You kept the entire Devs storyline, but you made the central protagonist Picard, and the people at Devs were synths. You know, and you had to figure out what have the synths done? What is the technology that they've created? What are they doing there? And what does it all mean? And I'm like, I would love to have seen a Star Trek episode like that. And I just feel that the Next Generation movies were all compromised. I mean, Michael Piller was trying to write this movie, but because of various forces, everybody should read Michael Piller's book on writing for Star Trek. And I know, hang on, let me see. You can't get it. Piller book. Writing Trek. Let's see if I can find it. If it's up. Fade In, The Making of Star Trek Insurrection. Well, there it is. Amazon. Well, heck, you can buy it. Oh, they're new from like $69. Well, you used to be able to buy this online, but here, everybody who's interested in Star Trek writing, you guys should absolutely check this book out. I think Sandra Piller, his widow, was selling this book, but it's pretty amazing. And it's got 3 ratings and 5 stars. Wow. But it's all about writing Star Trek and writing screenplays, and it's absolutely incredible. And it bums me out. I think none... As a matter of fact, honestly, Star Trek 2 notwithstanding, I mean, I think all of the Star Trek movies have gotten the short shrift from the writing department. I really do. But that's just me. Chairman Mao sends in a tip and says, been watching the Harry Potter 4K with the kids, as I've never seen them. Seems like pretty much every British actor of any renown was in the series. Easier to think of who hasn't been in one. Yeah, I mean, one thing about the Harry Potter series is I think they get a little bit repetitive, but man, if they're not handsomely produced and beautifully acted movies, you got to give it up for them. They really are. Dancing Dog sends in another tip and says, you mentioned the Alien trailer. Yes, the Magic trailer. Anthony Hopkins, that's a great trailer. It was great. Big Top Pee-wee had a neat trailer. Not a good movie, though. The original Coming At Ya had a great trailer. That's right. The first Dark Knight teaser was neat. Okay, back to your show. You know, I also love the trailer for Tim Burton's Batman, the long trailer that opens with the bat plane crashing. I think that was a great trailer. Dancing Dog also goes on to say, Rob, Christian Slater has a cameo in The Undiscovered Country. I think it's because his mother actually was the casting director on it, and he just loved Star Trek and wanted to do it. Was he possibly going to be cast in Paramount's The Academy years? I don't think so. I think that his mom was just the casting director, I believe, Mary Jo Slater, and got him in the movie because he wanted to be in the movie. I think that's kind of where it came from. Let's see. Stephen Goggin writes in... And Stephen Goggins says, oh, you know what? I'm not going to read that because that's an Elizaviews letter that I'll read tomorrow. So thank you, Stephen Goggin. I'll read that on our show. Our man Dean Mikitich is here. Hi, Rob and the Post-Geek Singularity. Recently, I read Disney was having a bit of financial difficulty, which made me go, wait, what? This has nothing to do with the current crisis affecting the world, though that's not helping. How can Disney be in financial difficulty when nearly all of their recent films bring in $1 billion at the box office? Not to mention the parks and the merchandise. Then it hit me. Could it be possible they are? Rob, you have a better understanding of how Hollywood and the studio works, so please correct me if I'm well off the mark. You've mentioned many times that the big studios don't have a vault full of money and need to go to the banks to take loans to make a film. So if they need to do this to make a film, they must do this to buy another company, right? Buying Marvel has paid off, as those films have all been successes at the box office and the merchandise is doing well. So Disney was able to pay back the bank within a few years and start to see a profit from that investment. Absolutely. Fast forward a few years and Disney bought out Lucasfilm and got Star Wars. As you've stated, they don't have money lying around, so it was another loan from the bank. So Disney are $4 billion down. Then they wanted to make a film, so another loan from the bank for a couple of million more. You are correct. You're exactly seeing what's happening here. The first film came out and makes $2 billion, and that pays off the loan to make the film and part of the loan to buy out Lucasfilm. Correct? So while the film was profitable, it was not for Disney, as they had to pay off the loans and are still in the red with the banks. Yes, you are correct. This would have been the case with the next 3 films, with the exception of Solo, all made money, but not enough to pay off the loans from the bank, as each film made less. With all the reshoots from with Rise of Skywalker, the profit gap would be smaller, as I'm sure that film went way over budget, plus it didn't make as much. So smaller income to pay off those loans. Then you got sales of the merchandise going down. As you said, Rob, kids are not playing with action figures anymore. That's right. I mean, some do, but... You also have to pay the permanent staff members that are working at Lucasfilm, so some of the profits from the films will also be going there, plus all the expenses just to keep the lights on. Plus Disney spent another $1 billion on the parks for Star Wars Land, so I guess that's another loan. I don't follow the parks, but I've been told that the numbers attending the parks are going down. But yes, because they jacked up the prices. This is not because of Star Wars, but because Disney has put the prices up, amongst other things. Though it would not affect the park profit margin too much, it would just take a little longer to pay off the loan. So has Disney paid off all the loans from the banks yet for Lucasfilm, or are they still at it? When did Lucasfilm start becoming profitable to Disney so they could pocket the profits for themselves? But Lucasfilm is not the only thing Disney had to take out loans for. You've got their new streaming service, which Disney has spent millions or even $1 billion on, as they have been developing that for years, plus all the new content for it. Though, as they did not have enough new content ready to go at launch, I'm hearing those without kids are dropping out of their subscription until Marvel content starts being put on the service, as there's nothing to keep people there. So it is unlikely that Disney Plus has made a profit yet, and it will take some time for it to be profitable. Finally, Disney bought 20th Century Fox last year for $44 billion, which, for reports coming out of that studio, is not in a good place. So with Disney buying them out, are they now having to take on Fox financial problems? Yes. So it's going to be a good decade, maybe more, until Disney sees a profit on that investment. With all of this in mind, I can see Disney having financial difficulty at the moment. That does not mean Disney will file for bankruptcy anytime soon. I think they've bitten off more than they can chew at the moment and maybe not made the right decisions lately. So I would not be surprised if we see Disney selling off some assets in the not-too-distant future so that, as Black Widows say, have a lot of red in their ledger. What do you think, Rob? Kind regards, Dean. Well, Dean, I am by no means an economist. And as Elizabeth will tell you, what do I know about relating to money or managing money? I think that yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Now, I can't speak. I'm not even a Disney shareholder, so I don't know what their P&L statements are and all that. But yeah, they're a huge company with many different diversified interests. Remember, they even have cruise ships. What's happened to the Disney Cruise Line as a result of this? Is anyone ever going to go on a cruise again? Maybe people will, but it's crazy. And Disney's a massive company with massive overhead. Think about all the salaries they have to pay, too, for all the people that work in these places. It's an enormous, I mean, they're taking in billions of dollars, but they're spending billions of dollars, too. But you did a very good job sort of summing up what happens with companies. And I think you're absolutely correct about this. And, yeah, it's rough. It is rough out there, ladies and gentlemen. And when everything, I mean, literally, their income has ground to a halt. Can you imagine a company like Disney? Your movies, your cruise ships, your parks, nothing. Now, they had huge success in Europe with the launch of Disney Plus. They had like 50 million subscribers. But think about that. Say, well, they're up to like 50 million subscribers. So let's say 25 million new subscribers. 25 million is only like, what is it a month? $6, $7, however much it is. It's not that much money in the grand scheme of things. I mean, they're doing well, but my God, it's craziness out there. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's so you see, everyone thinks Disney has lots of money, but when you curtail their intake of money, I mean, and Disney's had their like everyone else. They've gone down to zero. Their parks are making zero. Their movies are making zero. Their cruise ships are making zero. The only thing Disney's got going is their streaming service. And even that, they've got to spend more money to make shows. It's crazy. Crazy. So you're absolutely right. David Goldstein sent in a super chat and says, are there any special features on the Skywalker Saga 4K box set? Are they worth it? I have to tell you, David Goldstein, I have not even opened that up. I took the shrink wrap off. I've been too busy. My reward when I go into the when I finish the Hills Run Red material, I'm going to delve into that box set. I mean, most of the stuff I've already seen, but I'm just going to take a look. But I haven't done it yet. I unwrapped it. I looked inside and put it there. So, which I was kind of bummed out because the inside book was dented. It had like bends in it. I'm like, really? But the outside box was fine. You know, beggars can't be choosers, I guess. But I did spend the money, so I wasn't begging for it. Anyway. Stubble McShave says, do you think Quark was running a clandestine brothel business? The holosuites were certainly used for special entertainment, and he often talked about his new special programs for the holosuites. Oh, I think it was absolutely implied that you could rent out a holosuite, and it was all about you could absolutely engage in whatever sexual activity that you wanted to engage in. That's what the holosuites were for. But I don't know. I don't know if you'd call that a brothel, because you would have, obviously, I would assume, holograms. You know, you'd have, just like the EMH, you know, you'd have holographic people. So I absolutely, that's what I always assumed. I mean, and why not? It would be fantastic. I mean, imagine. I mean, I don't think I would do that if I had access to holosuites. I don't think I would use them for sexual purposes. I would probably do something else. Like I'd maybe go places I hadn't gone, like experience what it would be like to I don't know, go down the Grand Canyon in a canoe. I've never done that. I mean, I can do that now, but I haven't done it. So maybe I'd do stuff like that, or visit planets. Planets. I've never been to this planet. I would like to take a walk on the outdoors on this planet. I mean, imagine you could literally recreate this, what it's like to be on the surface of Mars, but have it breathable, so you could still get a sense of what it would be like to be there. That's what I'd like to do. I mean, that's what I would use the holosuites for. I don't know, unless, of course, I would like to find out what it's like to have an Octurian, as they mentioned in the movie Aliens. That might be interesting. Dancing Dog sends in another tip and asks, Rob, do you want to beat the tar out of Finnegan as well? That, of course, Dancing Dog is referring to the Star Trek episode Shore Leave from the first season of the original series, and Finnegan was Kirk's nemesis at the Academy, and Kirk did get to beat the tar out of Finnegan. I don't know, I have no beef with Finnegan, so I wouldn't necessarily want to beat the tar out of Finnegan, so I wouldn't do that. Calvin Bose sends in a super chat and says, why hasn't anyone optioned the Tarzan books? I would love to see the books adapted. Me too. Well, they have. I mean, Disney adapted. There's been many Tarzan books. There hasn't been. Well, there was. Maybe the books weren't, but even Alexander Skarsgård played Tarzan not too long ago. Just like I'd like to see the Barsoom books. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah. I would like to see that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this now brings me, because I do have work to do, brings me to the end of Robservations episode number, what show is this? 387. By God, closing in on episode 400. People are really liking the idea of doing an 8-hour show. I'm thinking about doing an 8-hour show, which would be a combination of live show and then pre-recorded spots. Maybe particular interviews I've wanted to get. I'm working on that. I don't know if I could do that. I don't even know if YouTube would let you stream live for 8 hours. They might. I'll look into that. But how funny would that be? Making a show from like noon to 8 on the 23rd of April. Wouldn't that be fun? I don't know how much fun that would be. I don't know if my moderators would be up for it, but I think that would be kind of fun. So, yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that brings me to the end of Robservations number 387. I want to thank all of you for being here and supporting the channel via letters, via super chats, tips. However, I do have people are always saying, do you have a Patreon? I do have a Patreon. There is a Burnettwork Robservations Patreon. If people want to look into that too, it is there. And I was thinking, Elizabeth's always asking about Patreon, and she's like, what if we did a show together just for Patreon subscribers? And I go, that would kind of be fun. I mean, I really like doing whining about movies with her, so that could be fun. I don't know. What do you guys think? I'll leave that up to you. Tell me. So remember my moderating staff. Remember those guys. They're great. Mayor Mike Bodden, of course, dealing with, I can't even imagine all the mishigas he has to deal with on a daily basis. Of course, Detective Jim, I want to thank him for his DM that I could read on the show today. There's, of course, Greg Smith, and then there's Louis Yu and Jordy Lyons. I want to thank you guys for being the great moderating staff that you are. So thanks for that. And Jordy Lyons, I think Jordy Lyons is going to watch Manifest. I don't know. I don't know if it's happened yet, but maybe it will. Can't wait to talk about Manifest with Jordy. Hope he watches Manifest and writes me a letter. It'd be cool. Remember, every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. All you got to do is listen. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I say, as always, have a better day. And yeah, I mean that.